It has been argued that all we need is more sanctions, and there is an argument that sanctions have value, but it's the unwinding and the leverage of removing sanctions that actually accomplishes something, not adding more sanctions. In fact, Ms. Newland, when you went to Moscow in October of 2021, you were only allowed to go because there was a negotiation in advance of that where we agreed to take sanctions off of a Russian individual, and Russia agreed in tandem to take sanctions off of you. I've had this discussion for quite a while. We have sanctions on 25 members of the Duma, mostly for political reasons, because they've politically spoken out against U.S. interests, but they are, of course, Russians. They also, in turn, sanction us as well, so 25, 30 members of Congress are sanctioned as well. Do you favor or oppose some sort of arrangement similar to your arrangement where sanction removal was traded to enhance diplomacy? Do you favor that for legislative sanctions on individuals?
Senator Paul, in the context of a Russian decision to negotiate seriously and withdraw its forces from Ukraine and return territory, I would certainly favor, and I believe Secretary Blinken would also favor,
I don't think
context.
hardly taking off sanctions on a member of the Duma is going to be traded for the end of the war. I mean, I wish it were that easy. What I'm talking about is allowing members of their Duma, many of whom may be favorable to our country, to travel to our country, and vice versa. I'm talking about diplomatic legislative exchange. I'm not talking about trading it for peace. I'm sure that would be great, but I don't think that's really on the table, trading, removing sanctions on Senator Risch for peace. I wish that were important enough, but I don't know that that's going to happen. But that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about very small, incremental removal of sanctions on legislative members in exchange for them doing the same.
Senator, all of the members of the Duma on whom we have sanctions are people who have supported Russia's war, the annexation of Crimea, et cetera.
That would be about 90% of the people of Russia. I mean, it probably would be 90% of the Duma. We only have sanctions on 25 or 30, but I would venture to say every member of the Duma probably supports Crimea. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying this is their perspective. And if we were going to sanction people for their belief in, their sort of nationalist version of the world, then we won't have any discussion between people or any legislative exchange.
Senator, I would say that if it is in U.S. interest for there to be conversations with Russians, we should look hard at what can be done to facilitate those.
I would argue that it is. There's been a great deal of discussion about prosecutions. Let's drag people to The Hague. Let's have some prosecutions. Would Putin be one of those targets?
Senator, he is certainly guilty of prosecuting war crimes. He's certainly the leader of this illegal aggression. As I said,
so it sounds like the administration would favor taking him to The Hague.
As I said to Senator Cardin, we are now looking with our allies and partners and the Ukrainians at the appropriate judicial mechanism, and that would indicate the scope of what would be covered.
If you're really thinking ultimately that there might be a peaceful settlement that doesn't involve unconditional surrender by the Russians or vice versa by the Ukrainians, you might at least put some thought into the fact that saying that he's guilty of war crimes and that it's a possibility he's going to The Hague, that it may make any kind of settlement, peaceful settlement, or someone who is fighting a war less likely to prosecute a peace or to engage in peace talks if he thinks, if there's peace, we're going to The Hague, that there's going to be prosecutions. I'm not saying one way or another on the facts of whether there are war crimes. I'm just saying that if you say the leader of somebody in a war that you'd like to ultimately resolve is guilty of these things, I think it makes it very much less likely. I think it's a careless remark, and it's a remark that doesn't really think fully through the ramifications of what you say. Because when you say that, I think you're basically saying this war is going to go on forever. And if you want to picture devastation, you see Ukraine now, in 5 years, it'll be worse. I mean, I don't imagine this getting better over the next 5 years, but if you preclude peace, I think you inevitably will make it worse.
Senator, if I may, I've spent my life at the State Department. We never preclude peace. That's what we're about. I would cite the precedent of Kosovo, of Bosnia, of Rwanda, where we have successfully supported wars winding down through diplomatic means while also
We
pursuing
kind of,
justice.
just about unconditionally won too, and we captured those people, or somebody captured them and gave them to us. I mean, that's what you would have to imagine. And I do think that you need to think through this, because I don't think you or the administration have, or anybody that's calling for prosecution of Putin for war crimes and saying this is genocide and all of these things and saying it's the Holocaust. Because once you say that, I think you make peace less likely. Nothing of what I'm saying is to say anything Putin has done is justified. I'm just saying that if you're going to say these things, you're very less likely to have any kind of peaceful settlement.
Thank you. Senator Booker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank our three witnesses.